After her children left her alone, Carmen Alvarez, an elderly woman, decided to leave a special message in her will. In a peaceful suburb of San Pedro Garza Garcia, a spacious house with a carefully tended garden stood out among the others. There lived Carmen Alvarez, a 75-year-old woman, known for her kindness and her garden full of bright flowers. However, that explosion of colors didn't reflect the loneliness that filled her home. Her children, Luis and Isabel, had left years ago, and what once were constant visits had dwindled until they disappeared. Sitting in her old armchair, with a cup of coffee in her hands, Carmen nostalgically gazed at a family portrait that adorned the fireplace. The smiles of Luis and Isabel, along with that of her late husband, seemed to come from a distant time. "Where are you, Luis, Isabel, my dear ones?" she whispered through tears, her voice barely audible. Suddenly the phone rang, breaking the deep silence. With a mixture of hope and anxiety, she answered. "Mom, it's me, Luis," she heard on the other end of the line. A palpable relief filled her heart. "Luis, it's been so long since I've heard your voice," she said, excited. "I've missed you," Luis replied with a tone that seemed carefully chosen. "We were thinking, maybe we should spend more time with you. How about we visit?" Carmen's face lit up with a sincere smile. "Oh, that would be wonderful, son. I can't wait," she replied. She didn't know then that this call would be the beginning of a series of events that would unexpectedly change her life. On a chilly autumn night, the lights of a car illuminated the entrance to Carmen's house. Luis and Isabel got out of the vehicle, their faces reflecting concern. Isabel, the younger one, with flawless makeup that hid the traces of time, cast an uncertain glance at her brother. "Do you think she'll believe us?" she asked in a low voice. Luis, older and with lines of tension marking his face, looked at her with determination. "She has to, Isabel. We have no other choice." When they knocked on the door, they were greeted by their mother's warm smile. "Luis, Isabel," she exclaimed, hugging them enthusiastically. "Come in. I made dinner." During the meal, the house was filled with laughter and stories about their lives in the big city. They talked about their jobs, friends, and some challenges, but they omitted one crucial detail: their precarious financial situation. The visits became more frequent in the following days. Luis and Isabel helped Carmen with household chores, brought gifts and small gestures that rekindled the woman's hope of having her children close again. One night, Luis dared to speak up. "Mom, Isabel and I have been thinking a lot. We miss you, and we're sure you miss us too. What would you think about selling this house and moving in with us in Mexico City?" Carmen, surprised by the proposal, looked at them with tears of joy in her eyes. The idea of living with her children again seemed like a dream come true. What she didn't know was that this dream would soon turn into a nightmare. Carmen pondered the offer for days. She loved her house, but the excitement of being with her children again filled her with enthusiasm. Finally, one night she made her decision. "Luis, Isabel, I've thought it over," she said, her voice trembling. "I've decided to sell the house and move in with you." The siblings exchanged a silent glance, hiding the satisfaction on their faces. "Mom, what great news. We're so happy," exclaimed Isabel, hugging her. "You're going to love Mexico City, I promise." With the decision made, everything moved quickly. The house was put up for sale, and to Carmen's surprise, a buyer was found in no time. Soon she found herself surrounded by boxes and wrapping materials, packing up her things for the move. As she put away the photo albums, a lump of sadness formed in her throat as she said goodbye to the place that had been her home for so long. "I'm going to miss this place," she whispered, gently stroking the frame of an old photograph. "Don't worry, Mom," said Luis, putting a comforting arm around her shoulders. "You're going to love Mexico City, and most importantly, we'll be together." At that moment, Carmen didn't notice the knowing look Luis and Isabel exchanged. She couldn't imagine the true intention behind their reassuring words. The big move finally took place. Carmen, with a mix of excitement and nervousness, said goodbye to the house and the neighborhood she loved so much. Luis and Isabel picked her up in their car and drove her to the enormous Mexico City. "Mom, you're going to love the view from our apartment," said Isabel, trying to ease the tense atmosphere. "And the parks, the shops, everything will be new and exciting." However, upon arrival, Carmen didn't find the cozy apartment she had imagined, but instead stood before the entrance of a nursing home. The pastel-painted walls and perfectly manicured gardens surrounded her. "Luis, Isabel, there must be some mistake," said Carmen, confused. "It's a nursing home, Mom," Luis began, his voice trembling, avoiding direct eye contact. "We're sorry for not being honest from the start. We can't support another person in our apartment, and with the money from selling your house, we were able to secure a safe and comfortable place for you here." Carmen felt her heart sink. She looked to Isabel, hoping it was all a cruel joke, but Isabel's face was serious, her eyes filled with tears. "Mom, we're so sorry," said Isabel, as tears streamed down her face. "We promise we'll visit you whenever we can." And so Carmen found herself alone, abandoned at the entrance of the nursing home. A deep sadness and a sense of betrayal enveloped her. With tears in her eyes, she entered what would become her new home, unaware that this sad chapter was only the beginning of something unexpected. Life at the nursing home was a drastic change for Carmen. She missed the freedom of her house, the familiarity of her garden, and above all, the hope of reuniting with her children. However, she was a woman of strong spirit and decided to face the situation head-on. One afternoon, while sitting in the garden of the nursing home, Carmen noticed an old house for sale across the street. Something about that lonely house drew her in. Remembering her hidden savings, she decided to buy it. When she shared the news with her children, they laughed, doubting her ability to take care of an old and abandoned house. "I'm stronger than you think," Carmen declared, looking at Luis and Isabel with determination. "And this will be my home." On moving day, Carmen once again found herself surrounded by boxes, but this time with a feeling of anticipation and hope. Soon after settling in, she met her neighbors, a young couple with 4-year-old twins. Clara and Mario, kind and attentive, offered to help with the house repairs. "Mrs. Carmen, this house needs a little love," Mario commented as he looked at the worn-out structure. "And I think we can help you with that." Thus, a new friendship was born. Despite the challenges, Carmen found herself surrounded by people who genuinely cared for her. It was an unexpected turn, but one she deeply appreciated. The following months were a whirlwind of activity. Clara, Mario, and their adorable twins, Lucia and Mateo, helped Carmen transform the old house into a home. They painted the walls, repaired the roof, and fixed the garden. Despite her age, Carmen insisted on helping wherever she could. "Mrs. Carmen, you need to rest," Clara scolded, as Carmen insisted on planting flowers in the garden. "Dear, I've never felt so alive," Carmen would reply, her face glowing with joy. The old house began to come to life. The walls took on new colors, the garden bloomed, and the house, once so lonely, was now filled with laughter and conversation. Luis and Isabel, watching from a distance, couldn't believe the transformation. They never imagined Carmen would be capable of such a feat. However, their surprise soon turned to anger and resentment. They felt that Carmen had hidden money from them. "Mom, you really surprised us," Luis said during a visit, his voice full of false cheer. "Yes, Mom, you've shown us how independent you are," added Isabel, her smile barely masking her discomfort. Carmen, happy in her new life and unaware of her children's feelings, simply smiled and thanked them, not realizing the storm that was brewing. Life in the old house had just begun, and with it, new twists and surprises were on the horizon. With the house finally in order, Carmen began to explore every nook and cranny, every room, discovering the secrets that the place held. One afternoon, as she descended the creaky stairs to the basement, Carmen noticed something unusual. The dark and damp basement was filled with old boxes and dust-covered furniture. In one corner stood a large antique trunk, locked tight. Carmen's curiosity was immediately piqued. Clara, noticing her excitement, suggested, "Maybe Mario could open that trunk for you, Mrs. Carmen." With Mario's help, they managed to open the trunk, revealing an impressive collection of jewelry and gold, each piece more dazzling than the last. Carmen, in disbelief, could hardly fathom the fortune she had discovered in her own home. "Incredible, Mrs. Carmen Alvarez," exclaimed Mario, his eyes wide with astonishment. "You are a very lucky woman." However, Carmen, still in shock, decided to keep the discovery a secret, sharing it only with her lawyer, Manuel Ortega, who advised her to safeguard the valuable items until she decided what to do with them. In the following days, Carmen reflected on her discovery. Although such wealth could change anyone's life, for her, the true treasure lay in the friendship she had built with Clara, Mario, and their twins, Lucia and Mateo. No amount of money could buy what she had found with them. With this realization, Carmen began to plan something that would transform the lives of everyone around her. Years passed, and Carmen became an essential part of Clara and Mario's family. The twins, Lucia and Mateo, saw her as a grandmother, running to her with stories from school and seeking advice. Carmen, for her part, cherished their company, her smile growing brighter in their presence. However, time brought its challenges, and her health began to decline. Old age was an unforgiving adversary, but Carmen refused to give in, finding joy in the little things. "You need to take care of yourself, Carmen," Clara would warn, worried about her friend. "I do, dear, I do," Carmen would respond with a smile. "I'm surrounded by the people I love, and that's what matters." Life continued, full of laughter and memories. The family Carmen had found in Clara, Mario, and their children was an unexpected gift, one for which she was deeply grateful. Meanwhile, Luis and Isabel, Carmen's children, were obsessed with the idea that their mother was hiding a great fortune. Convinced that this wealth rightfully belonged to them, they plotted ways to ensure it didn't slip through their fingers, completely unaware of the treasure Carmen had discovered in the basement. One cold winter night, while sitting in her favorite chair by the fireplace, Carmen made a decision. She called her lawyer, Manuel Ortega, and began to plan her will. The choices she made that night would mark the most surprising final chapter of her life. As the months went by, Carmen's health continued to deteriorate. Though sadness lingered in the house, she insisted on keeping her smile, cheering up Lucia and Mateo with her stories and reassuring Clara and Mario that everything was fine. "You are the family I've chosen," she would tell them, holding their hands. "And I couldn't be more grateful." One day when Luis and Isabel visited, the tension was palpable. They noticed their mother's fragility, and although emotionally distant, the reality of the situation hit them hard. "She should be in a hospital," said Luis, trying to sound firm. Isabel nodded, avoiding her mother's gaze. "No, my dears," Carmen responded with tired but determined eyes. "This is my home, and I want to spend my last days here." The visit was brief and awkward. As they left, a strange calm settled over the house. Carmen watched them through the window, an unmistakable sadness in her eyes. "I hope one day they find happiness," she whispered. She knew that would be her final encounter with them. Although she felt her time was running out, she was not afraid. She had her family, Clara, Mario, Lucia, and Mateo, and she had her final plan. A plan that would bring justice for all. The end came quietly for Carmen on a cold winter morning. She took her last breath with Clara holding her hand. The loss was felt by everyone in the neighborhood. The kind lady who had brought so much warmth to their lives was gone. "I promise to take care of everything, Carmen," murmured Clara, with a mix of sadness and determination. "Rest in peace." Luis and Isabel received the news with a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness at the loss of their mother, and relief for the wealth they believed was now theirs. The community came out in droves for Carmen's funeral. Clara, Mario, Lucia, and Mateo received condolences from friends and neighbors, all sharing stories of how Carmen had touched their lives. At the end of the funeral, a serious-looking lawyer approached the family. "I'm Manuel Ortega, Mrs. Carmen Alvarez's attorney," he said, handing out sealed envelopes. "She asked me to give these to you after the funeral. There will be a reading of the will next week." At the mention of the will, everyone's eyes widened. Clara and Mario looked at each other in astonishment, while Luis and Isabel could barely contain their anticipation. "Thank you, Mr. Ortega," Clara responded, accepting the envelopes with a nod. Thus, with Carmen's passing, a new series of events was set in motion. Carmen's final move was about to unfold, promising surprises and unexpected revelations. In the days following the funeral, Clara and Mario, along with Lucia and Mateo, reminisced about Carmen with affection. The house felt empty without her presence, every corner evoking the love and warmth she had brought into their lives. The sealed envelope the lawyer Manuel Ortega had given them still lay on the dining table, a constant reminder of Carmen's final message. Finally, one afternoon, Clara decided to open it. "My dear family," began the letter, written in Carmen's trembling handwriting. "If you're reading this, then I'm already gone. But don't be sad. Remember the laughter, the stories, and the shared meals. That's what really matters." Carmen continued the letter, expressing her deep love for all of them, grateful for having them in her life. Toward the end, there was a mention of the will. "You will find out everything during the reading," she wrote. "But know that I tried to do what I believe is fair. Clara and Mario, you were my salvation and my family when I needed it most. And Lucia and Mateo, you were the light that brightened my final years." The family finished reading the letter with tears in their eyes. Carmen's love for them was felt in every word. But what did she mean by, "what I believe is fair"? The day of the will reading was approaching, and a mix of curiosity and anxiety hung in the air. Carmen's final wishes would soon be revealed, but no one could anticipate what was about to unfold. The office of the esteemed lawyer Manuel Ortega was full that sweltering summer afternoon. The tall windows let in beams of sunlight, casting long shadows over the polished wooden floor. Clara and Mario, Luis and Isabel, along with other members of the community close to Carmen, sat in leather chairs that creaked with the slightest movement. The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound, a tense symphony of expectation hanging thick in the air. In the center of the room, Manuel stood behind his imposing mahogany desk, the sunlight reflecting off its surface as his grave expression dominated the scene. He took the thick envelope that contained Carmen's will, and everyone held their breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," Manuel began with a firm voice that echoed against the walls, "I am here to fulfill a duty of utmost importance, to read the last will and testament of our dear Carmen Alvarez." He paused, scanning the room before continuing. "If you are ready." The tension in the room was palpable as Manuel began reading the document. His words were clear. "To Clara and Mario Martinez, I leave my residence and all my personal belongings." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room, and all eyes turned in disbelief toward Clara and Mario. But no one was prepared for the next revelation. "As for my accumulated fortune in jewels, gold, and diamonds," Manuel continued, pausing deliberately, "equivalent to several $1,000,000. The room erupted in astonished whispers, the initial tension replaced by palpable shock. The lives of everyone in that room were about to change dramatically. "Half of my fortune," Manuel's voice pressed on, "will be generously donated to the La Luz del Dia nursing home, the place where, under different circumstances, I would have spent my final days." Luis and Isabel swallowed hard, realizing their hopes for an easy inheritance were slipping away. Surprised glances were exchanged, while Clara and Mario nodded in quiet understanding of Carmen's intentions. Manuel, with a touch of emotion in his voice, continued, "The other half of my fortune will be given to the children of Clara and Mario, the young Lucia and Mateo." The silence that followed was deafening. The air hung heavy with awe and disbelief. Luis and Isabel were left pale, their dreams of quick wealth crumbling. Meanwhile, Clara and Mario looked at each other, their eyes wide with disbelief, struggling to process the magnitude of Carmen's generosity. Manuel concluded the reading, choosing his words carefully. Carmen left a final message for her biological children, Luis and Isabel. He paused and took a deep breath before continuing. I hope you find the happiness you seek, and remember that money is not the source of joy. True joy comes from the people we love and how we treat others. You already received your share when I sold the house under circumstances in which I felt coerced. You will receive not a penny more. The room became a whirlwind of mixed emotions. Luis and Isabel, their faces full of rage, quickly stormed out, leaving behind the echo of their departure. Clara and Mario remained motionless, trying to comprehend the unexpected generosity of Carmen. But one thing was clear. Carmen's final wishes had deeply altered their lives, and nothing would ever be the same. Luis and Isabel were completely enraged. How could Carmen have decided to leave the majority of her fortune to strangers and a nursing home? They considered themselves her children, no matter how they had treated her in recent years. This is an injustice, Luis muttered as he and Isabel settled into the car after the will's reading. We're her family. That money should be ours. We're going to contest the will, Luis declared with a determined look. She was out of her mind. She didn't know what she was doing, he added with conviction. On the other hand, Clara and Mario were in shock. They had never expected to inherit anything from Carmen, much less a house and a significant sum for their children. We can't accept this, Clara said, visibly emotional. She was our friend, not our benefactor. Mario, holding her hand, responded, You're right, Clara. But maybe we can use this fortune to do some good, just as she would have wanted. And so, as the storm began to brew, Carmen's will sent the town into an emotional whirlwind. The weeks ahead promised to be full of tension, as the supposed heirs prepared for a battle that could change their lives forever. Indeed, the days that followed were fraught with tension. Luis and Isabel hired the best lawyers available to try to contest Carmen's will. She was not of sound mind when she signed it, Luis argued in court. Meanwhile, Clara, Mario, and their lawyer, Manuel Ortega, prepared to defend Carmen's wishes. Your Honor, Carmen Alvarez was fully aware of her decisions when drafting her will. This claim is nothing more than an act of greed, Manuel defended before the judge. The court sessions were intense, filled with testimonies, evidence, and raw nerves. Finally, after reviewing all the evidence, the judge ruled that Carmen Alvarez was indeed of sound mind when she drafted her final will. The contestation was dismissed. A heavy silence fell in the courtroom when the verdict was announced. Luis and Isabel were in shock, while Clara and Mario experienced a mixture of relief and sadness. They knew this inheritance symbolized the last tangible memory of their dear friend. This isn't over, Luis growled as he left, glaring at Clara and Mario. I'll take this to the appeals court. Clara, silently holding Mario's hand, nodded. They knew the road ahead would be long, but for the moment, justice had prevailed. Carmen's wishes would be honored exactly as she had planned. Despite their threats, Luis and Isabel were never able to take the case to the appeals court. The defeat in the local court had drained their resources, and they eventually realized that their excessive ambition had caused them to lose the final connection they had to their mother. They chose to withdraw from the town, fading into the anonymity of their lives. Clara and Mario, on the other hand, dedicated themselves to honoring Carmen's legacy in the most meaningful way possible. They invested their children's inheritance in education and established a scholarship fund for underprivileged children in the community. Carmen's house was restored, becoming not only a family home but also a symbol of the love and generosity she had shown. I'm not sure we deserve all of this, Clara remarked one afternoon as she watched their children play in the backyard. It's not about deserving it, Clara, Mario replied, embracing her. It's about what we do with it. Carmen gave us the opportunity to make a difference, and that's exactly what we'll do. In the end, the story of Carmen Alvarez became a reminder to the entire town. True wealth doesn't lie in material possessions, but in the love and kindness we share with others. Her memory lived on, not only in the restored house or the scholarships awarded, but also in the hearts of those touched by her generosity and love. And so, life continued in her beloved town, a place full of great stories and deep lessons. Until the very end, Carmen ensured her legacy was one of hope, love, and generosity, a story that would continue to inspire future generations. We've got more great content waiting for you. Click on your next video and dive right in.